It's the fabulous former Conservative London mayoral candidate, Susan Hall.
Hello, Nana.
It's so good to have you on board.
Thank
because
you.
I wanted to talk to you in particular about what it was like as you went through that mayoral campaign, because there was so much out there and it must have been so pressured. What was it like?
Well, it had lots of different moments. I mean, one of the best things was listening to Londoners, and I spent a lot of time doing that. I was with a very small group of people that were helping me, but they are such lovely people. They made it much, much easier for me. And of course, the problems that all politicians have is the abuse they get for doing the job as best as they can. So it had its moments, it had good moments, and it had more difficult moments.
As a person, though, the toll that it took on you must have been quite intense, because I thought you'd be out there a lot, but for some reason you didn't seem to be out as much as I was expecting to see. Was there a reason for that?
Do you mean on the media?
Yeah.
Yes,
the media.
no, I wasn't. I was spending most of my time talking to Londoners, listening to what they were saying. And when I realised I wasn't going to win, I really felt for the people that had begged me to do what I could because of the ULEZ expansion. Nobody should impose a tax that will hit the poorest the most. And that's exactly what Sadiq Khan has done with the ULEZ expansion.
But he would argue that he is creating a clean air environment for the people in both inner and outer London. I mean, that's his argument.
Well, I would urge him to go and talk to those people that simply cannot afford to replace their cars and just don't know what they're going to do. And I feel that I've let them down, and I'm very sorry, because if there's one thing he should do is to put a stop to the ULEZ expansion, but he won't.
Now, your campaign, there were controversial moments in the campaign. People talked about tweets that you'd liked and all this sort of thing. Did you find that was sort of a distracting from the actual focus of what you could bring to London? Well,
of course, and what we've got to look at is that Labour will always immediately term any of their opponents as far right. They love to call all of us racist, Islamophobic, white supremacist, and of course on that we can look at that dreadful tweet from Wes Streeting, which he put out the day before the election. And if you don't know somebody and you're thinking about voting and you suddenly think this person has been called all these things, that's going to frighten you. You're not going to want that person. And this is exactly what Labour do all the time. And they use Hope Not Hate as an organisation. It's supposed to be a charity. And it does nothing but smear and demonise people. If anybody looked into it, it doesn't touch anything to do with Labour. It's always the Conservatives that it has a go at, or anybody that's centre or right-leaning. And I think they've been given public money. But their chairman,
we don't have evidence of that, though.
Well, their chairman is somebody that is on the national executive of the Labour Party. So I hope somebody does delve into it and have a look, because the literature they were putting out against me was nothing but a disgrace.
Well, for those who don't know what Wes Streeting said in his on his Twitter, he said, "A win for Susan Hall and the Conservatives is a win for racists, white supremacists and Islamophobes the world over." Now, that is our potential health minister. Emily Carver did challenge him this morning on it, and let's have a listen to what his reasoning was and How he got out of why he said those things.
I mean, Wes, you're guilty of throwing mud just as much as the Conservatives are. I mean, last time we spoke, it was about that tweet. It was about that tweet to Susan Hall supporters, wasn't it, Wes? Saying that a vote for Susan Hall at the Labour mayoral elections was a vote for, you know, racists and Islamophobes and all of this. That was potentially tarnishing millions of voters in London who were just fed up of Sadiq Khan's record on some things.
No,
that's
absolutely
student union politics, isn't it, really?
Sadiq's big enough Sadiq's big enough and ugly enough to take criticism. If people don't like him or don't like his policies, we'll disagree on that, but that's totally legit in a democracy. What Sadiq has faced, I think, is an unprecedented barrage of racism and prejudice as the Mayor of London. That's what I was calling out. And I don't think Susan Hall is racist. I don't think she's a white supremacist. I don't think she's an Islamophobe.
So he called it totally legit for a democracy. That's what he's saying there.
Yeah, I bet they wouldn't like it if we did it to them. No, and quite frankly, we wouldn't, because we don't think that way. We don't think of our Labour colleagues as being scum. We don't think that way. But unfortunately, they do. And it's all very well for him to say, and I'm very glad he has said that, because I'd come in contact with him and I did like him. So clearly, the day before an election to do that, it's done for a reason. It's done to frighten people into thinking, oh, my goodness, we don't want somebody or people like that.
Well, I think a lot of it probably had the reverse effect of some people thinking, well, whoa, if that's what the Labour Party think that that's good, acceptable to put out there, then it isn't acceptable. I mean, I looked at that and thought, if I did that and did something like that, I'm sure I would be in trouble. And if any of the people who work here said things like that, we would be in trouble for that. That's not something that you should be able to get away with. But what effect did it have on you personally? Because I know you wrote a piece in the paper about the effect that you were afraid to go out because of it.
You've got to remember that 6.1 million people saw that tweet. And if they actually believed it, and 6.1 million is a hell of a lot of people that have seen it, if any of them believe it, and I'm out and about in London all the time, I'm on the Underground a lot, you know, it does put people in danger. And we should be far more responsible, and I'm afraid Labour are not responsible at all when they throw these accusations at Conservatives in particular, because who knows what will happen. And it's not good enough, quite frankly.
Has he apologised to you personally for that?
No, of course not. I don't see. Well, he doubled down on it, didn't he?
But even there, he said that it's totally legit in a democracy for him to say that.
Yeah, well, we can all take a view about that. I don't think it is.
Well, you know, I would urge you, Wes, if you are listening, to apologise directly to Susan, because that's not acceptable. And actually, it's an insult to the people who voted for you.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's calling us all white supremacists and all that kind of thing, which what happened with Lee Anderson when he talked about Sadiq Khan, he was in trouble, he lost the whip, and he's no longer representing the Conservative Party. So, Susan, what happens now? You've been through the mayoral race. You didn't win. There was a moment where we thought you might win.
Yep.
But you sadly didn't win, obviously. A lot of Londoners were disappointed by that. What happens now?
Well, I'm a Conservative through and through. I shall continue to fight for the Conservatives in the general election. I think many people need to be a bit concerned, because I think Sadiq Khan and Keir Starmer are looking at London and looking at the way that Sadiq Khan is raising money in London. The ULEZ expansion has brought him in eye-watering sums of money. Clearly, pay per mile was on his agenda. There's no question about that. Thankfully, I hope my campaign has made him at least stall it. But Keir Starmer will be looking at that, because I think there's something like £28 billion unaccounted for in his pledges. So he'll be looking to how he can make more money from people in the country, basically a tax, in order to fund his pledges. And I would say, be careful, his war on the motorist will be coming next, and it will be coming for people that drive. And when you look at the pay per mile, I suspect we'll have to be looking at that. If Labour win the next election, then look out, all of you, because war on the motorists will continue. Well,
he said that he's not going to do pay per mile. He sort of reversed his decision and said he's not going to. This was before the mayoral campaign.
Sadiq Khan said during the mayoral campaign that he wasn't, having spent over £20 million, I think it was, on looking at the research into it. It's in his, it was in his strategy. It's all over the place, and there are people working on it now. So, you know, he says he's not going to do something. He never said he was going to bring in the ULEZ expansion. In fact, he said he wasn't going to, and look what happened there. So I think we need to be careful, and I think the country needs to be careful, because the war on the motorists will continue, because somebody has got to fund that great big hole, £28 billion hole, and Keir Starmer's pledges.
Because I'm not seeing the development of what is needed if we are to go forward with electric cars. Because in London, I don't see much infrastructure going in. Are there plans for infrastructure within London for this, if they're trying to push us all into this direction?
There's nowhere near enough infrastructure. I know so many people that were going to buy electric and aren't now. No. And I believe the demand for electric cars is going down. That's what I read somewhere. No, we're just not ready for it.
It does seem a bit odd that they'd want to advocate for that, because that means they need places where you can park to charge the car. London is very short on space. So in order to charge a car, you need a car's length to sit in a charger, and London does not have that kind of infrastructure.
Well, that's right. And it's worse than that, because in Sadiq Khan's London plan, which is what I was going to change, it actually stops car parking spaces where you've got flats and things like that. So people in flats, how on earth did they get their cars recharged? It won't work at the moment.
And also, once everybody has a car that no longer falls within the charge of ULEZ, so if your car is completely compliant, which in time every car will be, especially with the scrappage scheme, what will be the point of those cameras? And that's...
Well, it's pay per mile. It's as obvious to all of us. But as I say, I think we're the test bed in London. I think the test bed to see how these things work, so that if Keir Starmer does come into power, that everybody can expect that throughout the country.
And finally, knife crime, a big problem in London.
Oh, shocking.
And the Metropolitan Police, it doesn't feel that anything is happening. What is happening with regard to knife crime?
Well, we all see it. Most days we see it. It is shocking, which is why people said, oh, the main thrust of your campaign was the ULEZ expansion. It wasn't, because that would have been stopped on day one. The main thrust of my campaign was around policing. I am passionate about policing. We need to get more police on the streets. Therefore, they need to be based back where the community they're policing are. And that's why I was going to put in 2 more bases in each borough, so that the police can be stationed near the communities that they're serving. That would really help with stopping things like knife crime, because people get the different police officers get to know the community, and they know pretty quick where there are issues in different communities.
And finally, that speech at the end, when I thought you were quite gracious towards Sadiq Khan, you said you're going to hold him to account when he won that. You got a lot of flack for that, people saying that you were having a go at him, even though you should have been saying other things. What was your thoughts on the day? And then that handshake. There was the handshake. People were saying that you offered his hand and he ignored you. Was that what happened whilst you were there? Because that's what it looked like to me.
That's what it felt like.
Yeah.
But you'd have to ask him that. Yes, when he was announced, I wanted to congratulate him. I was standing next to him. And the speech was, yes, I will be continuing to hold you to account, because Londoners deserve that. And that's what. And I asked him to do better, because knife crime is absolutely shocking. It's going through the roof. You know, all those mothers that know their kids are involved in gangs are frightened of them going out. Of course they are. Yeah. And we need to be dealing with it, and we're not, I'm afraid.
But you are still in the London Assembly, you are still working hard.
Holding him to account.
And are you likely to go back again and try again to be
Oh, gosh. Race? You have to jump through so many hoops before you're selected, so it would not be my... It would not be my decision.
All right. Well, Suzanne Hall, thank you very much for giving me your first interview after that mayoral race. Thank you.
Thank you.